Welcome, guys. We're gonna get started soon. Just putting my background colors up. I have my violet, my phalocyanin, nope, that's fluorescent pink, my yellow ochre, and of course my white. We'll get started in a little bit, working on our background first. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay. How's the music? How's your day? How's your morning? Right now it's almost 11 a.m. here in Illinois. So what time is it where you are? Where are you watching from? Thank you so much, Gwen. Yeah, we are feeling better. Knock on wood that no one gets the stomach bug again. It's gone through a house except me. So let's just hope that I don't get it. Yay, Donna, it's so good to have you. I'm glad you could make it. Excellent. So I just said this before. If you didn't hear it, this is violet, fluorescent pink, yellow ochre, and I actually want to add cadmium yellow. So these are the 4 colors we'll start with for our background. Well, I have plenty of yellow. Oh my goodness, it's 7 a.m. in Hawaii. This is either an early paint or an early painting watch for you, Donna. I hope you enjoy it. All right, creatives, are you ready? We're gonna paint Puka. Finally, it's been a lot of delays, it feels like, on this one, but I am just so excited. This one's gonna be so much fun. And I promise this is gonna be beginner level. I'm gonna make this as simple as possible for you newbies. So we're gonna start with our background. I'm gonna start with our pinks that fades to some darker violets. And so let's start with our fluorescent pink and our white. Got my paint palette here. You don't need one, but it sure does help. And you want a good decent amount. Whenever we're working with our background colors, you want a good amount so we can paint the sides and we can even go back to it if we need to. So I wanted to really make this a pastel color. So add a good amount of white to it. All right, so I'm going to leave that pile be. I'm going to pull just a little bit right next to it, add in some violet. So we have our fluorescent pink, white, and violet here. I'm going to add a little bit of pink to that, more of a fluorescent pink. And if you don't have fluorescent pink, you could use a magenta. You could use, goodness, a mixture of yellow or red and white to make your own pink. Okay. All right, I'm going to clean this off because I want to just make a separate pile of a darker purple. So that's going to be violet with our white. And no, yeah, that's what we're gonna do. Those are the three colors that we're gonna have for our background above the Shih Tzu. You guys ready? I'm gonna grab my large brush. This is my size 10 angle brush. I'm gonna make sure it's clean and damp. Okay. I'm going to start from the light to the dark because it's a lot easier moving from light and then moving darker than the opposite, because then we have to use so much of the lighter color. So let's start with our pink on the left side. And you can adjust this as we go, as it's still damp. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lighten it up because I really want that to be a pastel, like a beautiful light pink that goes to a rich, deep violet. So I just added a little bit of my wet titanium white paint to it. Okay, and then I'm going to move up with just the pink that we mixed up. We really want to get close to that traceable, even to the point where we're seeing over it. We're actually painting over it. And this is quite a thin layer of paint. It's a light color, so we can even see that traceable underneath it. All right, so once I get to about a little bit, like around the back, I'm going to start pulling in with some of that pink on my brush, this purple. And the trick here is doing this while it's wet and blending it as we go, as we move to the right. All right, you can see it's not blended here. So what I'm going to do, little trick here, I'm going to actually work on the side first. I just put my brush, my art angle brush, into my cup of water. And I'm with a clean brush, any brush really, but I'm using a size 8 capstone brush. I'm going to blend this. I'm just pushing paint around because it's a dry brush. That's one way of blending it. I might even add a little bit more pink because I did kind of pull off a little bit of paint, and just blend it nicely. Or if you want to leave it a little bit more abstract, you don't have to blend it perfectly. And depending on how much time we have, we can even add a second layer at the end. Just will really richen up that color. Okay, so I'm going to go back to our middle purple pink, going back to that, and now working towards the right again. As it dries, you can almost see this area a bit more. So once again, once it dries, you can actually touch up that area if you want with their colors. And about here, I'll go to my purples, okay? So right here, I'm going to my just the violet mixture and working it all the way to the right. Blending it, overlapping it so it blends while it's wet. Right now it's going to be, here in Illinois, it's supposed to be a high of 50. It's so warm compared to yesterday. We had snow yesterday. So I'm really looking forward to going outside with the kiddos after this. Just working on my sides now. What a pretty violet, don't you think? Magenta into her violet and a pastel pink. I'm not satisfied with that, so I am going to go back to that with my clean damp brush. What I'm going to actually do for that is I can mix up some of this pink with some of our purple pink. I'm going to test it out, see if that's a good joiner. A little on the dark side, so you know what I do. Pick up more of that pink and blend with my brush almost flat. Sometimes it takes a few tries to get that blended, depending on your level of blending that you want. Going back to just pink. There we go. Oh, Belgium, welcome. That is awesome. Welcome to have you. Glad to have you. Okay, so I think I'm going to move on now to the bottom area. This is a yellow blanket using yellow ochre and our cadmium yellow. I am actually going to replace my water because the complement of yellow is purple, and purple is a great way to darken up yellow. So I don't really want to darken it too much. Okay, so I'm going to make sure my palette knife is clean as well. And I'm going to go into our mixture of yellow ochre and our cadmium yellow. I'll just mix up those two colors together. I actually want more yellow ochre than cadmium yellow for that. Okay. And then the next bit is cadmium yellow with white. A sunny color to welcome in the spring. I thought these were kind of like Easter egg colors, getting ready for spring. I'm going to add a bit of white to that, a little bit more. Oh, UK, excellent. That's where my family's from. My mother's family all live in England. Excellent. Well, welcome, guys. Glad you're joining in. And I'm going to go to, I have a few little nooks and crannies in this. So I don't want to use my largest brush here. I'm going to use my flat brush. This is my size 6 flat brush. I'm going to make sure it's clean and damp with my fresh water. I just replaced it because I don't want it mixing with the purples. And so now I'm going to start with our darkest color. So we have our yellow ochre and our cadmium yellow, and I'm going to start in the darkest areas first, which is right here in these little folds. And I actually want to bring this, see how we have this line here? I want to bring this darkness along that line to the right of it. I'll pull it along the side. And then I'm going to dip into this lighter color here of our cadmium yellow and white. And I want to blend this area carefully, bringing it along the bottom next to that purple. I don't want to blend that, but I do want to blend these two yellows together. So once again, I'm going to go back to this darker purple. I want to make sure that darkness kind of goes up higher. I don't want to make this too light at the top. And then I'm going to start working this around the ear. And so this dog is creating a shadow on the blanket, and I really want to accentuate that, really want to exaggerate that with these highlights or these shadows. And I'm going to start cutting in over top our lines for giving us some guidance on the direction of the fur. You can kind of still see through it with this yellow, but I'd rather go up really high into that than have to work around it later with this color. Okay, so I'm going to dip into this yellow, brighter sunny yellow, and blend again, and also fill in this white area. If you make it too light, that's okay. We can go back to this darker color and blend in some more so it doesn't get too light, but still allows us to create the shadow around Puka. All right, so then I'm going to work a little bit, a tiniest little corner use of my brush, so really not much violet. So violet with a little bit of this yellow, the darker yellow, so that I can darken up this area. You see how I'm doing that? And I'm going to paint inside this darkest shadow underneath the nose. I want that very dark. In fact, let's add some more violet to that because I'm not quite getting that dark enough. Didn't think I would need that much, but I actually do. All right. Gonna go back. I have a clean, damp brush. I'm gonna go back to this yellow. I want this blended here. And then I'm gonna continue in front of that with this color. Okay, so this, not the darkest yellow that we mixed up with the violet, but the one we were working on over here with our yellow ochre and cadmium yellow. I'm gonna move in front of that. Hi, Bonnie, welcome. So glad you can make it. You are right. Best thing to do on a Saturday, I most agree. Painting dogs on a Saturday morning. And I don't want that to dry, so I'm gonna blend into that below it, overlapping it a bit too, with our lighter yellow. And now this shadow is gonna kind of stick around here, down by the front below the nose, but it gets much lighter here. The light source is gonna be really hitting that blanket here, which is why I'm gonna bring this all the way up to that line and have it blend. You see how I'm doing that? I want this to lay over top that and stay dark down here, but not up here. And then I'll work in this corner with this color. And as I get to the bottom, I'm going to pull in more cadmium yellow into this just to give it a bit more variation. We have our brownish yellows here and kind of a cream colored here, but now let's pull in some of those warmer yellows at the bottom. My canvas is a little uneven, so it's knocking on my table here. So all the traceables for these live paintings you can find in the Masterclass. The Masterclass, I will link. I don't actually think it's linked quite yet, but I'll make sure I link it at the bottom of this video. So I'm actually going to add a little bit of that yellow here too. This area is still dry for me. Hopefully it's still dry for you. If not, just pull in some of your dark yellow. Pulling a little bit more of the cadmium yellow into that. Oh, that's excellent. You're painting a wolf. That's excellent. It's so funny, Sammy. I'm actually the other painting that is open right now on my other canvas, or my other easel, is a wolf. I'm painting a wolf too. Fun. All right, so I'm going to go into the darker yellow, brownish yellow here. Gonna work now right in this corner on the far left. Okay, and just like we did here where we went from dark to light, I'm going to do the same thing. These are just the folds of the blanket right now, this yellow blanket. And before I go all the way up to the top, I'll pull in some of this yellow, this light yellow with a bit of our more cadmium yellow. And I know I say this so often, but I'm going to say it again. If it looks too thin, if the paint looks a little too choppy, what really helps with that is a second layer. So doing everything we just did a second time can help make these colors look richer and thicker too, so you can't see through them. So there's actually, I want to create a dip in this blanket. So I'm going to work this area a bit more. I'm going to go to a mixture, adding more cadmium yellow to this cream color that I made, adding it over here, but then also pulling it more in towards this area, towards Puka, and keeping this area dark, okay? Using my curving brush strokes to create that little dip in the blanket. I'm going to once again go back to my darker yellow, add another layer, and once again blend with my curving brush strokes. I'll even take it up a little bit here too. We really want to do a good job on our blanket so that we can apply these little somewhat wavy, thick white and black curls over top. So you want to get your blanket pretty done. It could still have some areas that need blending, but at least around the dog, you want that done. So I'm just adding more of this darker yellow up here. I want to get rid of this blended area. I want to work that so it's kind of a medium value there. So I'm going back to my cadmium yellow and my cream color. There we go. And then lastly, I'll go back to just this lightest yellow and I'll highlight the top of this blanket on both sides. I'm going to use my finger to smooth that out a little bit. Been using my fingers a lot for paintings lately. It's another tool that comes in handy just like a brush. All right, so give yourself, I'll give you a few more minutes to work on your background, the blanket or the area above, and then we'll work on the eyes, nose, and mouth. I'm going to refresh my water again. Now, if you missed it, I sent out an email about value, and if you struggle with that value, this is a great place to start, because we're going to be using all different black and white gray scales, working with our dark gray and our light gray, trying to match it by the correct value. So this is going to be really good practice. All right, so I'm going to add black and more white to my paint palette. Oh, this is brand new black. I got to open this one. I guess I'll just probably, yeah, I'll just add some right here. I always tend to put it over top wet colors, and colors I don't want to blend it into, and so I put it aside. Okay, you guys ready? I'm going to get my palette knife again, and we're going to mix up a very dark gray. So that's just with black and a bit of white. I'm going to mix up quite a bit of this. Okay, we're going to start on the eyes first. All right, and then I'll mix up a light gray. Light gray. So this is going to be a good amount of white. A little bit of this dark gray. I'm just going to pull some in there. Black goes a long way. You can see I just mixed up a medium gray. We can use it. I'm not going to get rid of that medium gray. I'll use it. And to make it easier on myself, I'm just going to drop some white there and pull in just the smallest amount of the dark gray. There we go. There's the light gray, our medium gray, and our dark gray. A light value, medium value, dark value. So do you have your reference pulled up? Because I will definitely be referencing that quite a bit. So all this fur that's standing up vertically, It's a guideline, but we're actually going to be painting over most of it, probably getting to about here, because we want to have a dark base where those light strands lay over top, and we don't want to see any white in between those light strands. So that's what I'll do. I'm going to outline the eyes, fill in the pupils, and also work around the eyes, and quite a lot of this area with our dark gray. And the brush I'm using, well, this is my size 1 round brush. I know that because I can never read the number because I've used it so much. All right, so carefully, I actually got my hand wet. So to prevent that, I'll use my hand to kind of prop it up as I'm painting. All right, so another thing to note is there is a strip of white right here. So let me kind of give you a guideline here. This is where we want to work on that side and this side. And so I'm going to come down to about there, working over top those lines that were just kind of a guideline then, but now we're going to paint over them until we paint the lines over top after this base layer. So when it comes to Shih Tzus, their features are very round faces, very round, large eyes that we often can't see the iris too well because of how much fur is laying over top their eyes, and it just creates a shadow. They have very square, pushed-in noses, and so I find their noses a lot of fun to paint. And yeah, so you want to make sure you start with the eyes and this dark area first when you're painting Shih Tzus. That's my recommendation. All right, so these lines here, I'm going to actually, if you watch me, I'm just going to work underneath this line here and down. And then right along these lines, these are the lines that are on that snout area coming up. I'm going to actually paint down like we did here where we painted over a lot of those lines. We're going to do that same thing on the side. And it looks like so ugly for a long time, and you'll wonder if this will ever look pretty again, but it's just because there's quite a lot of planning, quite a lot of layering. Okay, and then I'll go straight. See how I'm doing this? I am actually going to take this darkness into the area we just painted, but only painting in that pupil. Very large, beautiful, round eyes, puppy eyes here. And those floppy ears also pushes that fur forward even more. And such volume, too, to the fur. You know, this dog has so much volume in that fur. Try your best to maintain proportions, because really getting those eyes right is a big, big part of creating realistic pet portraits. So take your time. So I'm going to let that dry because, well, I'm just going to move to the left side. Getting down real close to that nose. Where's my music? All right, so and then the area that I'm going to paint with this dark gray is right here, all the way down, okay? And I'll even bring this over top this line, okay? I really want to prepare and cut into this area a lot more than my drawing so that I don't have to go back to it with dark gray and I can just layer lines over top. It can be intimidating because then you're like, am I going to make sure? How do I make sure that my lines are in the right spot? Well, you don't have to make sure the lines are placed exactly like the reference, but you can take the cues you get about direction and length from the reference, and it'll still look realistic. Okay, so let's paint in that pupil. Oop, I'm getting myself full of dark gray. So this is a little tricky, trying to keep a steady hand. Then I'll raise it up to this curved line here. I'm actually going to bring this in a little bit more, this line here, but I will extend out that light gray when we get to that. And that's another thing. I'm going to, this little guy looks like a raccoon. I start with if I'm working with a black and white dog, I'll do the black areas first, and then I'll work on the dark and medium grays for the white areas, and then I'll add all those highlights. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves too much because let's work on the inside of the eyes now. Like I said before, we really can't make out, like that's not just the pupil, that's actually part of the iris, but the shadows are making it hard for us to tell the color in there. So that's not just the pupil. But what I'm going to do is go in with our medium gray with a clean damp brush. Okay. And just with the medium value, this might be too big. Yeah, so that's too big of a brush. I'm not happy with that brush. I'm going to go in with my size 0 round brush, okay? And very carefully, I'm going to paint this white area on the bottom, okay? Carefully getting into this line right here. It's so thin. On the bottom is where I'm going to place this medium value. And then immediately after that, I'm going to go to our light value, just the tiniest bit on my brush. See how little I'm adding? And right below there, in this white area that's left, I'm going to fill that in with our light value. Blending that right on my canvas. All right, and I won't add the highlights over top because we have a little eye highlight there you see in the reference, and eye highlight there too. I'm going to let these colors dry first before I do that. Okay, and we'll do the same thing on the right eye with starting with our medium value, working on the bottom and in and around. You also definitely want to get the eyes painted before adding these strands over top, because the Shih Tzu has this fur that is more vertical and it'll overlap the eyes. Now on this right side of this eye, we're going to add a little bit of dark gray because it's getting more shaded from the fur. So you'll see how I painted this with the medium gray, but I'm going to add the smallest amount of dark gray on my brush. Dab, 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 darkening that up. I'll do the same thing to the left side, a little bit more. And then before that medium gray dries, I'll go in with our light gray. And I just brushed off my brush, so it's damp. Got a little bit of paint on there, but not much. And that can be my blender brush. So keep working if you're still working. What I want to get rid of now, okay, so we place the pupils and the darkened iris and the sclera, but now I want to take my dark gray and get rid of this moon, these moons, okay? I'll show you what I mean by that. This looks like a moon, this one does too. I want to cut off some of that right here, but still keep it round. And same with a little bit on the other side, on both eyes, okay? I don't want it to show such a point and making it look like a moon and not so realistic. There we go. That really helps emphasize like how these eyes are kind of getting hidden. And I tell you, it's really going to make a difference when you add the highlights, but we'll not do that yet. We're going to move on to the nose. Okay. So for the nose, I'm going to fill in the nostrils first with our dark gray. And I'll outline the bottom of the nose, okay? I'm going to outline the nostrils, and I take that back. So see how I use that line to underline this left and right of the nostril? That's where I want to add the darkness. Not here, okay, not here and not above there. So just right around here. Because their nose isn't, their nose is very dark, but just in this particular reference, it's getting a lot of light hitting that nose, so I want to keep it not as dark. But where we are going to add more of that dark gray is this indent here, which if you notice in the reference, it goes all the way down. Okay. I actually need to get closer to those nostrils. I need to get closer to that line. We want symmetrical nostrils. Okay, so what I'm going to do is with my size 0 round brush, I'm going to pick up some of my dark gray and some medium gray, mix that together, and now that's the color I'll use to outline the nose. I will pull in this dark to medium gray. Okay, so it's really a dark color, but it's not a dark value, not like that one, but it's not as light as the medium value. And I'm going to outline the top now with this color, this one we just mixed together. And you can see I'm adding a thick outline. Okay, and let's continue on with this color above the nostrils, okay? I'm starting to get that itch again in my throat, so excuse me if I keep coughing. Okay. Outlining both nostrils with this dark to medium gray. Better to go too dark than too light, okay? So try not to go too light. That just will layer slowly from dark to light. Okay, so there is a highlight here, so I'm not going to bring this dark gray down there, but we have more shadows on this, below this area, so I will bring this darkness down here. And then I will outline the bottom and work up alongside this black or dark gray indent. And I'm just mixing up some more of the medium gray with the dark gray. I painted over that a little bit. Now I could just leave that white and paint the highlight there, but it's actually not super strong. So I'm going to just continue painting around that indent. And back up. Okay. I'm going to work towards up the center of the nose, in between the nostrils. And I'll bring this all the way towards the center, just like that. And then we'll go in with our medium value for the white areas. So that's what I'll do next. I'm going to go in with our medium gray. Let's see if this is, yeah, perfect. That's not too light, not too dark. Going to fill in the white and then make the adjustments that we need to. Do you need me to zoom in? Let's zoom in here so you can see that nose a bit better. I know it's a tiny little square nose. All right, so you see, I'm going to actually just use that medium value, but pull it down along this side because we have this kind of like darkness right here and then a highlight. So I'm going to start just with the highlight for now. And then I'll take this medium value. Okay, not too much paint on my brush. Be careful you're not making your lines too thick. And I'm going to create that highlight to the right of that indent, that line indent. Now another subtle highlight is right here. So it's almost like there is a dip in the nose right here, but we're not seeing it like we see it here. So it's creating a little bit of light hitting that side of the nose. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our mixture of the dark value with the medium value and start blending some of this together a little bit. I'm pulling down this lightness, but leaving that highlight there. All right, so let's now go to our light value. So I'm going to actually not start with my lightest value. I'm going to mix up some of the medium value with the light value that we have on our paint palette. We're just pulling from that and mixing a, not quite our lightest, but close to it. And I'm just going to dab over top the areas where we applied the medium values applying the highlights. So it's right here in this corner and above the left nostril, a little where we added that medium value, a little bit above the right nostril. Also right here, it actually comes right below the left nostril and up. And if you're looking at the reference, like I've been talking about, this one right here is pretty obvious. So we just did dark, medium, and light, and a few in between. So let's go back to our dark gray, revisit our dark gray again, add some contrast, and an area that is definitely dark, that's actually a little too dark. So I'm going to actually bring in a little bit of our medium to dark just to lighten it up a bit. To the left of that line indent, that's where this darkness is. I also have a little bit of darkness right on the outer edge of the left side of the nose. I'm going to lighten that a little bit more with the medium value because there's more darkness to the top right. Oop, need to make that bit darker, of this nostril. Kind of comes down like that. My puppies are making a big fuss. I don't really know what's going on outside, but it's interesting them. Okay, so I have a clean brush now. I'm going to do some blending with the dark grays that we've just applied. See, I'm doing this. I'm pulling it around a little bit more, also blending it. Another area that we can apply our dark to medium value is this line right here. And also, an area that I missed is right below it. Ooh, I brought that down a little too far, but that's okay. That was with our medium to dark value. I painted over some of this and I want to put it back in. There we go. And again, back to our light to medium values where I mixed in some of the medium value and our light values. Let's do it again. Add some more of our light values in case we painted over some of it, or just add some even more than we have. And I'm doing little dots, little dabs, very small. Right over top where we did it before. And I'll go back. This is the last thing I'll do to the nose, and then we'll move on back to my dark to medium. It's not quite dark enough, so I'm going to add more dark value, and I'm going to darken up this part of the nose right here. There we go. Now, if you missed, some of my proportions are off a little bit here, so if you need to reshape your nose a little bit, do that now. I want to maintain that as best I can. Okay. All right, so let's go to those eyes and add the highlights to the eyes, shall we? So I'm going to go to my medium value here. Let's test this out. This highlight right here overlaps the scleratus and the pupil area, and it's right here. Perfect, yeah, I like that. Another one with our medium value is right there, little dot. I can actually bring this highlight up a little bit more than I have it. It's almost like a strip. It's almost like the light's hitting right here from top left. And then I'll go back to just a littlest bit of my light value. I really mean a little bit, guys, little bit. And I'll just lighten up the left side of that highlight. Now for the medium value, like we did on the right, starting with the medium value, we have a highlight, real strong one actually. It's again square shaped, right in the middle. And then two more, one dot here and a dot below it. That's really what creates the puppy eyes when you have those round eyes and the highlights over top. Then I'll go with the smallest little bit of the highlight and add that to this big one right here. Now acrylic paint dries darker, so if those in like an hour look too dark, we can add more of our light value over top that. Same with the nose, you know, if it looks too dark, we can always lighten it up in an hour or a little bit, even sooner than that. Okay, so let's move on to the rest of the dark fur. I'm going to start with our dark gray, but if you need to mix more up like I do, that's fine. Let's do that. We have just, all we used was a bit of white and dark gray, or I'm sorry, and black to mix up our dark gray. Okay. And for this, I'm going to use my cat's tongue brush to fill in the darkest areas on those floppy ears, those cute floppy ears. Clean, damp cat's tongue brush, size 8, okay? We're going to start with the left one. And you see how there's like a little dip in this left ear? I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to exaggerate the width of this, the size of this. Oh, welcome, Melody. Oh, that sounds just fine. And I'm going to bring this up to about there. And back down to where we have the darkness right at the bottom here. Applying more base than we need. All right, I'm going to get a little bit lighter. So I'm going to mix my dark gray with some of my medium value here. And what I'm going to do is take this, use the tip of this brush, okay? You might want to watch me first. And as I work along this curved part of the top of the ear, I'm going to also cut into the background, curving brush strokes, curving these lines. So that these lines are going to curve into that blanket. All right, so I'm going to add more medium value to that we just used. And I'm going to start working on this part of the ear. These lines here are just where it cuts off with the dark gray. I'm not going to work all the way down, but I am going to add this medium gray right above here. See how I did that? And then go back to my dark gray and work down while cutting up into and blending into some of those medium grays, just to create some distinction between this part of the fur on the head and the ears. No worry, Anna. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you get to work on this a bit later. See how this is getting dark at the bottom? I want that to fade at the bottom. Kind of vanishes there. But at the same time, I don't want to lose this gap here, this shaded area. So cute. How cute is that? All right, let's move on to this right ear now. This right ear and some of the fur on the forehead. So let's work on this line right here, this curved line. I'm going to work alongside there with this dark value. And here's the thing, if this was black fur, I would start here first and start going from back to front. But this is the dark fur, this is white fur, and so that's why I'm starting here before that, even though it's behind it. Curving my brush down. I'll also use this dark gray to go, this ear is just resting and it kind of comes out a bit on that blanket. So I'll take this dark gray, still using my cat's tongue brush, bringing it out, and then back up. See this line right here? I'm going to use that line to start creating, applying the direction of that fur, which is curving down and at an angle. So I'm going to do that with our dark gray. I'm going to wash off my brush. It's getting a little too thick. I need to keep the tip of the cat's tongue brush relatively thin so that we can go in with our medium to dark value. So going back to that with the dark gray and the medium gray mixed together, I'm going to start working right along the top of the head like we did on that side. Bringing it down along this line. And along this white strip right here. This is going to show me where that fur is laying over top that right eye. Again, going back to the top of the head with this dark to medium gray. Curving it over top and to the right. So some of my dark grays here are still damp. So that's why I'm just blending that down, creating that dark gray base. So I'm going to go back to just the dark gray right here. This is much lighter, so I'm going to just work up into that point and then go back to our medium to dark gray. So we know that that part is much lighter. I'm just pulling in more of the medium value because it blended away on my paint palette. Moving my brush up and down at an angle. See how dark this base is, but we still have some indications of where things are moving in the direction. All right, so let's move on to the back. I took it upon myself to kind of get rid of the confusion and right here, I kind of took out that black area. So I just kept the black area right here. So we have black here, and then right above the head, we have black there, well, dark gray. So let's go in with our dark gray for that. And I'm gonna add, yeah, let's just do dark gray, and then we can lighten it up. All right, so this does not have to be perfect because we actually want it to have that texture. I'm still using the point of my cat's tongue brush. Going up first along this strip. And we actually don't need to bring it up too high yet because we'll paint in the white fur and then pull up more of that dark gray over top that. So you don't need to add those strands perfectly right now. We don't even want to do that just yet. How we doing, guys? For the next part, it's even thinner line. It's directly above the head, but leaving that part white, okay? And it connects to the top of the ear. That's where I'll bring that down. I'm gonna get rid of some of this white. See how I did that? I kept that thick, pulled down some of that white. Excellent, Gwen. I know you were waiting so patiently for this one. I hope yours turns out lovely. All right, so I have a very dark. Once again, I'm gonna have to refresh my water because we're gonna need clean water for our light grays now. Okay, so you might want to do that too. These are my large brushes. I'm not too concerned about them being upside down in my water. But my detail brushes, that's a different story. I want to make sure that they are not face down because then it damages them quite a bit. So that's what we're going to start. I'm going to use my size 1 round brush to work here now on a medium gray. We'll use our medium gray for that. Okay, and I'm going to expand this out because that is going to be much larger than I thinned it out with that dark gray. So here I go with my size 1 round brush and the medium gray. I'm going to thicken this line up a bit more, bringing it all the way down. See how I have a bit of a white strip? You can bring that all the way down to your puppy nose. Oh, no worries, Kathy. Yeah, you can always go back to it. Glad you could watch. So this line is like straight up and then turns a little bit. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. I'm not bringing it out too much on the right side, but I am going to bring it up straight. And then we'll go into, we're going to mix up a bit of our medium value with our light value. Okay. And if you watch me, the fur looks like it's going like that, but we still need a base like right here. That's what I'm going to do. I'm creating this light to medium gray base so that we can pull the lines over top that. That's our light value with our medium gray. So now I'm going to create these lines that cut into this dark area. Okay, so I'm taking a bit more careful. I'm being more careful with these lines that are cutting in with our base of the medium to light gray. And I'm getting the direction correct going up and at an angle up on this side. And I'm not concerned, actually, about getting that all the way to the end, because with our lightest, almost whites, we're going to be cutting into that dark gray over that way on that side. So I'll bring it to about there. Now you can let this layer dry and then add in the whites over top, but I find it helps me if I do it while it's wet with the light gray. So I'm going to go in with my size 2/0 liner brush when I need a really thin brush for this. And I'm going to start from getting this area correct, okay? I want to make sure that's set, and then I can move out from there. So what I like to do is work from one side and then work around to the other side. So I'll show you what I mean with these individual lines. And it can be a bit of a bother if you have the wet paint. So just be patient. It might take one line at a time. But I want them to overlap like this. See how I did that? See how there's some lines overlapping, but they're going in the correct direction, that more straight up. And then I'll work out from there, curving my lines around over top the dark gray. Just make sure whichever side you're on, every line is nice and clean. If you notice, I'm actually taking some individually over top that dark gray on this side, and I'll do a few on the other side. And slowly but surely, as we get lighter and lighter, it'll start to create way more form, way more depth. To the point where we can actually bring it up over top the dark gray up here and bring the lines up over top the bit of white that we have left. Now these lines are much lighter. We want them light. And you'll find as the layers dry, it'll get lighter. It'll start to show up more. You'll start to see that light. The 2/0 liner brush, Desiree. Good question. Sorry if I missed that. You're welcome. No worries at all. All right, so I'm gonna let that dry for a little bit. We'll add some lighter, almost whites over top that in a little bit. I wanna work on some of the medium grays for the other areas. We'll actually move to here. That way it doesn't dry on us. Okay, so let's get a medium gray base down with our cat's tongue brush on the muzzle area with my cat's tongue size 8, medium gray, and I am just filling in, for the most part, a little bit of pulling strands down, but mostly just filling in with white. I'm going to start underneath the nose. So the direction here is, I can almost a little bit see my lines just slightly underneath the yellows. I'm going to use the tip of my brush and bring some of these clumps down to that, curving some, very curvy on this muzzle. And I'm going to use, to get into here, I'm going to use a smaller brush for that. I'll use my size 1 liner brush, medium value, and I'll just pull up. I'm even creating a line around the nose to help me get around there carefully with this medium gray. And then beginning to get that fur up over top this dark gray. It's really very tall fur, so I'm not going to get there just yet. But I am going to start to get that direction. All right, I'm losing some of my medium values, so I'm going to actually, I'll mix some more medium gray right now. That's just with white and black. So that's our medium gray that we pull from. Have you been noticing how I've been doing this? Dark gray, medium gray, light gray. And then from those three, we figure out, okay, does this need to be kind of a mix between a medium and dark? Or does this need to be a mix between a medium and light? And then we test it out, and then we adjust. We adjust to see if we need to lighten it up with more white or darken it up with more of a dark gray. See, that's a little too dark. And add more white to it. I think a big part of it is just not being afraid to just test it out and risk messing it up on your canvas. Like, that's the scary part, but that's kind of how I'm able to gauge how light or dark it needs to be. Okay, so now I'll go back to my cat's tongue brush and replace my paper towel. Boy, that thing's soaked. All right, so I just mixed up more of my medium value, and now I'm going to do the same thing I did over here and just fill in this area, the larger part, and then I'll go in with the smaller areas with my smaller brush. So that's what I'll do now. I'll use my smaller brush, size 1 liner. I find these furry muzzles like the funnest part. I just really like how challenging they are. They're a lot of fun. All right, so now with my liner brush, I'm pulling down some of these individual lines. And if you notice, they're not straight down. They're also not like just at an angle. They're curving, a little bit wavy. Some are overlapping. And that's what I'll do now. Over top this dark area. While I fill this in, I'm also going to pull down some of these strands ever so carefully. Keeping them nice and thin. Not quite touching the blanket, but almost. And the one on the right, the strands on the right here are touching the blanket. That's why I'm going to bring them down. And this blanket's kind of over top the this part of the muzzle. So then I'll just paint up and in the rest of this white here with this medium gray. Again, like I did here, not going all the way up, but starting to get there. And my direction is changing. It's kind of going straight and then more like this and then curving. And it really helps to add an outline above the nose and then working above that line just so you keep the nose in proportion and even around it. So you, again, with the muzzle, you start short. You start with a base of medium gray if you're working with white fur, and then you work out and make those lines longer. And if not, you can always go back to your dark gray and cut in and fix it up if you make any mistakes. Excellent. How we doing, guys? You doing okay? Oops. It's really sunny here. The sun's really coming out. So while we have this, oh, do I want to work on? Yes, I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to let that dry because I want to work on getting the white covered up as best I can. So I'm going to work with my cat stung brush, not my liner brush. Oh, excellent. Welcome. Glad you can watch. I'm going to go in with my cat stung brush size 8. And this needs less attending to because it's a little blurry in the reference. You can't see it as well. So very simply, I'm going to take some of this medium gray right along here and to the right of this ear and just fill in the bottom area. Not getting where we have our background, not there, but beneath it. And we definitely don't want to go too dark here because we're working with white fur, and that's really important. If you go too dark, it starts to look like gray fur, and we don't want it to look like gray fur or a darker color. So the key is getting it a medium value and applying that as the base. I brought this white part in a little bit. Okay, I'll go up to about there. Now this area is very short and this brush is very long. So although I want to use a detail brush, I wouldn't want this brush because of just the length of it. So a good brush would be this one. It is a round brush. It's actually a filbert brush, but it's a bit rounded and it's short. And so this would be ideal to get into this area and still create the texture that I want. So I'm going to mix up some of my light value with the medium value, just a little bit of the medium value. And carefully, just a little bit, okay? Just a little bit, cutting in to that purple and kind of magenta background. But here's the thing, it's more on, the direction is more this way on that side, and then it gets a bit straighter and then changes as we move to the right. So I want to make sure I get that right while cutting into some of the medium grays, and this will blend, and that's okay. Thanks for watching, Melody. So glad you could come. We'll see ya. Now this gets even shorter and shorter to the point where I'll probably do some dabs along here. See how I'm changing my direction now. Now, can I actually pause for a second, because in my mock-up I used a dark gray to kind of separate this part. It's a little, yeah, just so I want to bring down the dark gray with this brush before I move down with this gray. I just want to bring up this dark gray. And then I'll wash off my brush and go back to that. So that's just with our light gray, and that's in the medium gray. Carefully, little dabs right now. I'm using basically like the front of my filbert brush, size 2. Did I mention that? Size 2 filbert brush. Okay. Not putting too much detail into this area because it's a little blurry in our photo. Now working down along the right side, and the fur gets longer because it's around the body. That's going to be much longer, thicker fur. So I'm pushing down on my brush a bit more. Now here's the thing, I'm not going to go in all the way here because I actually want that a bit darker. So I'm curling my brush like this and then around like that. Excellent. All right, now we're going to move on to this area right here. I'm going to actually go just a smidgen lighter, just adding some light value. Filling that strip of white in, and then we'll get to really adding texture and detail. I am overlapping the dark gray. Okay, I am going over that dark gray with this light to medium gray. All right, I can't wait for this next part because we're going to go back to the dark gray fur. Okay, I'll have to pause. I won't go to the dark gray fur because I actually have to do this muzzle. I like doing the muzzle. We'll move to that next. So we're going to use our liner brush again. This is my size 1 liner brush. And now we're going to go lighter than we did before. Okay, so this is going to be our light value with medium value, just a little bit. So we just want to go a little bit lighter, okay? Not our lightest yet. All right, so I'm going to start around the bottom of the muzzle. I want to make sure there's not too much paint on my brush. And now what I'm going to do is go over some of the lines we just created at the bottom and start making them go out to the right. Okay, so they're actually kind of short. They're stacked. They're short right here, and they get a little bit longer and a little bit longer. So what I'm going to do is start working around them with that one line at a time, creating these like clumps of clusters of lines. So I'll do like a cluster of like 2 or 3 lines in one area, and then I'll move to a different area. And then my brush is getting too thick, so then it's also drying to my brush. So that's when I wash it off. Go back to a mixture of my medium and my dark. Medium and my light value. Having some overlap, some others going in a different direction. See how I'm doing that? Curving some. And then I'll start working up again above that nose. And this is where you want that thin brush of paint. So I'm going to wash off my brush. Bring it up a little higher. Oh, so this is actually too thick of a brush for me. I'm going to move back to our 2/0 liner brush. All right. There we go, much better. This is where I'm really giving it that length, curving it. Okay. If you need to leave gaps in between strands and then just get the right direction, kind of map it out and then thicken it up with more lines in between that, that can be a good technique. So I'll go back and like thicken up add more fur strands in and around that. And if you look at the reference, these lines are actually so far that they're going over top the right side of this eye and even the front area of that eye. Thank you so much. It's been a fun paint so far, that's for sure. Lots of good lessons in this one. And so what else I want to do while I'm here is bring some of this down a little bit further down so that there's still a bit of a shadow in between that area. All right, so I washed off my brush. I'm going back to a mixture of the light value with the medium value. We'll do the exact same thing. I'll work from down to up, bottom to top. I know it's a little scary. You don't want to mess up, but the mess ups can help us learn. The mess ups, and hey, you may not even mess up at all. But you got to do it. That's how you learn. It's the best way to learn. So this is not the final lines that we'll apply. We'll get lighter with those lines over top. Just gradually go from a medium gray base to a little bit lighter, then a little bit lighter, and then lighter again. Okay, so now I'm actually taking these lines out over top the dark gray on the right side now. And if you notice in the reference, we have kind of like a big clump right here, and then another clump that kind of intersects that. So what I'll do first is this one clump of lines, and then I'll have these lines going like that. All right, so if you notice, I actually just pull in some of my light value. And this is where we go over the lines we've already done and add some more alongside of it, okay? Without covering up all of that base layer. And just another thing that will help you, the end of the strands, the end, not the root where it is deepest in there amongst all the fur. The tip is going to be the lightest point. So that can actually help by working and finding those lines and that part of the line. And then you can even go back to your medium gray to clean up any of the lines that you don't like. And so even lighter now, because there's lines that go over top that group. See how I'm doing this? And I'll have to be doing I'll do some touch-ups to that nose, certainly, because I'm getting my light gray in there. You'll find areas then, from there, where you can thicken up the lines, and then it kind of fades into that medium gray, okay? You can decide where you want to place that based on the lines you've applied. So like right here, I'll probably thicken up the lightness there, but then have these lines overlapping it, so it's still light gray, a medium gray in there. Line after line. See, every line counts. Every line. Because without it, you just can't build up these layers. What a beautiful song. I love this song. So I'm going to take a little break from the fur area and clean up my nose before it gets away with me. So I'm going to mix up some of my dark gray and my medium gray and just reset that nose. Refresh the gray. So what I'm going to do next is actually, while we're using these grays, I'm going to go in with my medium value and a little bit of the dark value. There's a bit of right here. I'm going to cut in between some of the lines we've done just to show a little bit of a shadow there, and around the nose, okay? I want this not too dark, so I'm going to add a little bit more of the medium value. It's a hard balance, getting that not too dark, not too light. And with my liner brush, I'm going to cut in all around the nose, in between those lines that we've made. This is a really important step. Like, this helps connect the nose to the hair and the muzzle area. The hard part is getting your brush upright enough and getting those lines clean enough right above the nose. So I'm going to add some more of my light gray. I'll just go in with light gray now. This fur here is getting hit with a lot of light, so it's going to be very light. Taking that up, almost giving it a little bit more of a curve, because this fur it's not really straight hair, it's not really curly hair, it's more like wavy hair. I still think I need to bring up the fur just even more. Oh, see that? I added too much water. There's still water in my brush. So I'm going to carefully wipe that off. Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. Puka's coming to life. That muzzle, you want to put a lot of detail into this area. It really helps do that. And definitely take advantage of the clumps of fur on the end of the muzzle fur. Like in the reference, you'll see big clumps on the end. Oh, what did they like? I don't know. I have a neighbor with a Shih Tzu, and he's just such a sweetheart. Do they shed a lot? Are they hypoallergenic dogs? I'd be curious to know. Okay, let us move on. Let's not forget about this dark gray area. We want to add the highlights to that. Okay, so I'm going to use my size 1 liner brush, and just like we're doing here, doing one line at a time, we'll do the same thing with our medium gray. I want to test this out to make sure it's light enough. Yeah, so that's a little too light. So I'm actually going to add a bit of darkness to that, our dark gray with the light gray, because we're highlighting black fur. So we really don't want to go too light. Okay, so I added more of the dark gray, and that's still not quite dark enough. So I'm going to add more dark gray to that medium value with my size 1 liner brush. Okay, that's better. We especially want these highlights to be by the top of the head where it connects with the white, and I am going over a bit of the white, so I'm gonna have to touch that up in a little bit, but that's okay. And what we also want to do is create the curving texture of the ears with this. And I don't need to do a bunch of lines to do that. I just need a couple lines on the ears to do that, leaving that dark shadow there, what we started with. See how I'm doing that? I don't need too many highlights. Just a few. And if you go too dark like I just did, or sorry, too light, you take your dark gray. I'm gonna have to add some more black to it. And just blend into it so you can darken it up. Now this line is a little too rough, too sharp, so I'm gonna soften it with some dark gray and add a little bit of a few lines right in front of it. Okay, with our medium to dark gray. I'm going to my medium gray to then join. Oh, that's still not light enough, so I'm going to add a little bit of my light gray to that. Join some of that right at the top there. And I'm losing some of my light gray, so I'm gonna mix up some more. I'm just adding white to our medium gray. There we go. And while I have this light gray, I'm gonna touch this area up very carefully. I'm using my liner brush to touch that up. Excellent. So now we'll do the same thing on the right side. So I want to keep this dark here. I want to keep this area dark here. But the fun part is we're going to kind of create a little bit more of a bushy eyebrow with our medium to dark value. So let's get this not too light, not too dark. This is with my size 1 liner brush again. Nice and clean and thin. And I'm just creating these wavy, curly, adding some of those curls and waves with just a little bit of a highlight over top this base. You don't need to add lines over all of it, just some of it, where the light is touching it. So now I'm using a little bit lighter with my medium value because I want this to show up. Yeah, perfect. Now I'm going up a little higher now. Back to my medium value. And eventually, in a little bit, sorry about my puppies barking, Mailman must be here. My sky blue is what I'll add to my paint palette to add those subtle accents where it's really getting hit by the light. All right, so I'm gonna mix up a little bit more of my black with medium gray because this area is not getting, oh, it is actually. We do want this to be relatively light, these curving lines here. In fact, I want to take some out into the light gray. Okay. I am using my dark gray to take that out into the medium gray, and then we'll highlight it a bit more. Aren't they? Isn't it so cute? The floppy ears just are so cute. It adds to that puppy face. Okay, so just want to shape up the top of it now. We just added some into the medium grays. Let me bring this into that light gray on that side. And then we'll add some more lightness with our medium gray. Just in that part of the ear. Okay, so let's go back to these areas, but before we move there, we're gonna go in with our medium and light grays over here. I'll still use this brush, I think, for down here, but then as I work up, I'll probably go back to my filbert brush. I'm gonna add more white. And what I'll do is I'll use this brush and mix it with some of our medium gray. All right, I'm propping my hand up here. So I went a little bit more abstract with this side. And so I had some of these strands kind of upwards like this, and then curving down, but leaving gaps in between with the medium gray. And then I made these lines go back up again and just kind of going in all different directions, a bit longer here than up top. Curling them over. Oh, absolutely, Nancy. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Yeah, this is a real fun one. I like this. Puka is truly adorable. With the Easter colors of the purple and the pinks. All right, so I'm working my way up. You know what? I may not even have to go to my filbert brush. We'll see. And I am going to slowly start changing directions. Having these lines, though, really cut into that purple. I don't want to forget that. I want to make sure they cut into the background. And as I'm working up, I don't want to cover up too much of the dark gray, because I want that dark gray will cut in over top these medium grays. And this is getting a lot of light, so I want this to be a light to medium value. So lighter than the medium value, but not our lightest value. Turning my brush the other way, but very even shorter brush strokes now. But also altering the direction a little bit in certain clusters. And we'll do the same thing right here. Exact same thing. Cutting up into that dark gray. See how I'm moving my brush like this now? Little tiny lines. And shall we go to this area now? Let's go, since we're using our light to medium value, I'm going to go in with my size 2/0 liner brush. This is going to be the lightest part. It's really getting a lot of light. And what I'm going to do now is work on the outer part first and work down, because of that being the lightest of this area. Going over lines I've already done and adding more. That's what I'm doing. We have a little tiny bit of our dark gray, and we don't want to go over that too much, because I actually want to add to the dark gray and pull it up into the light gray. So don't go over it too much with your light gray right now. All right, so I'm basically using white, but mixing it in with our light to medium value. I'm going to go over again this part of the fur with this. Get another layer. And I did find that I'm doing well without the filbert brush because I'm not filling in that entire strip like we did with the base. I don't need these lines to be so thin and skinny. I actually want to push down on my brush so it looks more clumpy and thick, because that's the body. We don't see too much of the detail. All right, dear friends, I'm gonna mix up another color with sky blue. Sky blue, and it's gonna have a little bit of gray in it, okay? So can you see this color? I wanna make sure you do. This is dry, so I'm gonna mix it right here with some of our medium gray. Just so it somewhat blends in with the fur. We've added the medium gray there. So with my size 2/0 liner brush, I'm gonna add just a few, not too many. A little bit goes a long way because of how vivid it is and how bright, standing out over top the grays. Just subtle little accents. So these really matter. These lines need to be clean. See how I'm just adding I added like 6 or 7 there. I'm gonna add just a few on this side. You'll find them where you've placed the light and medium values. That's where I'm placing these. I'm not really putting them over top where there's a dark, dark gray. I'll also have some right here. They're actually closer to the bottom where the light gray is. They're not close to that part. They're closer to here. I just washed off my brush so it's damp, so I can pull that down a little bit more. Oops. And then with our dark gray, we'll use our brush to pull that over top the medium grays. Okay, so I can't really blend too well with this brush because I need to blend to mix up more dark gray. So I'll just mix up more dark gray with my palette knife. Here I go. That same brush, okay? Same brush, my liner brush, 2/0 with our dark gray. And add this nice texture over top, but not going over the blues that we just added. And I'm not bringing them up too far, you see? I'm not really pulling, I'm not making them super long. Also here, it's really small, okay? It's really tiny to get in there. And it's the clumps of fur that causes the strands to kind of collide and overlap. They're not all going in the correct direction. Oh, thank you so much. I was thinking Easter colors. I didn't want to add more pink or purple or green, so I thought the yellow would work. And in this round two, I made the yellow a bit more cream colored, and I actually think it works. You're right. I think it works. My difficulty here is that I'm making these too fine and thin, and I want to make them a bit more clumpy because this is on the back. We don't want them so detailed. We want them to be a bit more thick and clumpy. You know what I'm noticing? This is a bit too dark of a value, so I don't want that to be too dark. I want to lighten it up, and I might even add a bit more lightness right here. So I'm going to test this out with my size 1 liner brush and some medium gray with a little bit of our light gray, okay? So this is more on the medium side than the light. And I want to lighten this up. This is just a little too dark. I'm joining it with those light values we've added. And then I'll add some more light values to the light values. I'll add some more. So I'm just mixing up white into our light to medium value. I'm bringing it down a little bit more and also highlighting the ones we've already applied. See how easy it is to go backwards, or I should say it's easier to not go. So if we start out dark, it's easier to go lighter. Here we went too dark and we just lightened it up, but it's just a little bit more tricky doing it the opposite way. It takes more working, and then you risk losing some of those proportions, getting the values wrong. And this line I don't want. I don't want that line. So I'm going to actually pull this up a little bit more. Almost blend it a little bit, but not too much. And bring this up a little bit more too. The other thing I noticed is that we darkened up the right side of this eye. I do think that we need a little bit more darkness on the bottom of this eye. So let's test it out with some medium gray and the dark gray. Yeah, perfect. And I'm going to darken up the bottom and the side. Oops, too dark. Don't want to go that dark. If you made it too dark, just go back to a medium value and lighten that up and like blend it, just like I'm doing here. I went a little too dark. And I'm going to shape that eyeball a little bit more, bringing it up with the dark gray. And I think that nose needs some working too, a little bit more love. I'm going to use that color I just made with the dark gray and the medium gray. Add a little bit right in the center here. And this side of the nose, because the light source is lighter, and I want to darken up that side. So I'm, again, going to go in with medium value and dark gray. Oh, that's not dark enough. A little bit more dark gray. I'm even doing dabs to kind of break that up a little bit more. And I think we have it, guys. I think we have completed Puka. If you want to add another layer to your background, if it's too thin for you, you can do that. That'll really bring out those Easter colors. You know what, one thing I want to do is actually go in and pull this blue up a little bit higher. That looks better to me. Yeah. Oh, awesome, guys. Another awesome, awesome live painting. I hope you learned a lot. Let me know if you have any questions below. I'll link the masterclass down below if you want to paint this yourself. Guys, have a wonderful weekend. Bye.